I haven't made a video about the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni situation because I do like to hear both sides of a story before I try to come to any conclusions about what I think is potentially going on. And while so many different factors of the situation have absolutely gagged me, like the fact that apparently this is not the first occasion of Blake Lively having issues with people that she's having to co-star with. Like, according to other videos that I've watched and things that I've heard other people say, it's apparently like well known within the industry that Blake Lively is hard to work with. I found that very interesting. Or the fact that I found out that apparently Ryan Reynolds was ghostwriting through the writer strikes. So he was like essentially, I guess, crossing the picket lines. I don't know. Or the fact that Justin Baldoni has countersued, right? And apparently has all this evidence and all these text messages that are allegedly going to prove that Blake Lively is just flat out blatantly lying. But all that to the side, what gagged me the most is that I got on TikTok today and I came across a video that this woman made where she was claiming to have worked with Blake Lively way back in the day before Blake Lively was ever even famous. We're talking like before she ever even did Gossip Girl. Like, apparently it was Blake Lively's like first big breakout role. It's the role that like made her famous and made people start knowing who she was. But the lady did go on to say that at the time she didn't even know Blake Lively's name. Like, that's how non-famous Blake Lively was at this time, right? But she went on to make a video talking about how she worked on the same set that Blake Lively was working on for her first big breakout role. And the lady was an assistant, right? And she went on to say, like, when you're an assistant, you don't talk to talent. You don't really talk to nobody. You just fetch things for people. You follow orders. You do what you're asked, and that's it. And she said that's exactly what she was doing. And she talked about how she was at work one day and she was coming down the hallway and she saw Blake Lively and I guess some of the other actors or actresses that were in the show or the movie that they were filming. And they were also coming down the hallway, but in the opposite direction towards her. So she said it was a very narrow hallway. So she kind of like leaned up against the wall so they could walk past. And she went on to say that she didn't really think anything of it because, you know, the talent, their top priority, they have to get on set and be where they need to be at the right times. So she moved out the way, she let them walk past, she moved on with her life. But then she goes on to talk about how like the higher ups, like the director and the producers and stuff like that, they pulled all of the staff members in for a meeting and they were going off on everybody essentially about professionalism and remaining professional. So she said she was sitting there listening to them talk to everybody about professionalism, and she said she was kind of confused because she couldn't remember anything that she would deem being unprofessional happening. But then she said at the end of the speech, they sent everybody out the room, but kept her behind because they wanted to talk to her more privately, right? So she stays behind so they can talk more. And they go on to tear into her about how apparently Blake Lively had allegedly went to them personally and said that she specifically made her feel uncomfortable because she felt like the assistant, the girl who was telling the story, she felt like she was acting like a fan. Like, oh, she's treating me like a fan. Like, she's acting like she's like a fan of me and it's making me uncomfortable. Mind you, this lady said that at that time she didn't even know Blake Lively's name. Like, Blake Lively had never been in anything worth noting at that point. And that gagged the hell out of me because it's like, if that's a true story, I mean, like, it's not like a smoking gun, but in my opinion, the best indication of future behavior is past behavior. Like, unfortunately, a lot of times a leopard does not change its spots. I know we love to go on and on about how people can grow and people can change. And while that is true, the unfortunate reality when it comes to most people is that most people actually don't change. Most people continue to remain the same, right? And so if it is a true story, then that kind of shows her previously having a willingness and a capability of lying on someone really for no reason, because the lady said that she literally didn't even speak a word to Blake and Blake did not speak a word to her. So she doesn't know how Blake Lively would have gotten the idea that she was like fangirling over her because they didn't even speak. They didn't interact. They just passed each other in the hallway and that was it. So it's like, if you did it before, will you do it again? But what also gagged me is like, if that's a true story, it begs the question, like, if you're willing to do that when you weren't even famous, like before anyone even knew who you were, like this is your first time on a legitimate set filming like a legitimate project, and that's how you're already acting like you're some well-seasoned actress that's been in the game for 40 years. If that's how you're acting before you were ever famous, then how are you potentially capable of acting now that you are an actual like household name? I don't know. Like I said, all of this is alleged because it is just like word of mouth. It's just a story that just some random lady got on TikTok and told. But if it is true,